Have you ever noticed how some older men don't just age, they transform? They walk into a room and without saying a word, they command attention, respect, even admiration. Not because of their looks alone, but because of something deeper, something powerful that most people overlook. Today, I want to share with you the truth, the real habits that quietly turn ordinary men into unforgettable ones. There's something almost magnetic about a man who has lived, struggled, failed, and still stands with calm strength in his eyes. It's not about wrinkles or gray hair, it's about what those years have built inside him, and the truth is, attractiveness at that stage of life isn't given, it's earned. It's shaped through habits daily, intentional ways of being that most people ignore when they're young. I remember once watching an older man sitting quietly in a crowded cafe. He wasn't loud, he wasn't trying to impress anyone, but people noticed him, not because he demanded attention, but because he didn't need to. There was a sense of peace around him, a quiet confidence that spoke louder than any words ever could. And that's where it begins. The first habit that makes an older man truly attractive is emotional control. Not suppression, not pretending everything is fine, but real control, the ability to respond instead of react. When life throws chaos, when people test his patience, when things don't go his way, he doesn't explode. He doesn't crumble, he breathes, he observes, and then he chooses his response. And this is rare. Because most people, even as they grow older, never learn this skill. They carry their anger, their insecurities, their ego like a heavy weight. But the man who learns to master his emotions becomes different. His presence feels safe. People trust him. They feel calm around him. And without even trying, he becomes attractive not just physically, but deeply, psychologically, emotionally. Think about it. Would you rather be around someone who reacts to everything or someone who understands before responding? That calm strength, that's what draws people in. And then comes the second habit, the habit of self-respect. Not arrogance, not pride, but a quiet, unshakable respect for oneself. The way he carries himself, the way he speaks, the way he treats his time, his body, his energy. He doesn't chase validation because he has already built it within. There's something powerful about a man who knows his worth but doesn't need to announce it. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't lower his standards just to be accepted. He walks away from what doesn't align with him, and that alone makes him stand out in a world where most people are desperate to fit in. Self-respect shows in the smallest details, the way he dresses not to impress others, but to honor himself. The way he maintains his health not for vanity, but for longevity and strength. The way he chooses his circle, not based on convenience, but on values. And slowly, without even realizing it, people begin to notice him differently. Because here's the truth most people don't talk about. Attractiveness isn't just about what you see. It's about what you feel when you're around someone. Now let me tell you something deeper, something that most people miss. The third habit is purpose. A man without purpose, no matter his age, feels lost. But a man with purpose becomes alive. There's a spark in his eyes, a direction in his steps, a meaning behind his actions. He wakes up with intention. He moves with clarity, and that is incredibly attractive, because purpose creates energy, it creates passion. It creates discipline, and when a man has something he is building, something he is striving for, something bigger than himself, he becomes unstoppable in a quiet, powerful way. I've seen men who weren't considered good looking in their youth become incredibly attractive later in life. Why? Because they found purpose, and purpose reshaped everything. Their posture, their confidence, their energy, even the way they spoke. You see, when a man knows where he's going, people want to follow, and this is not about money. It's not about status. It's about meaning. It's about waking up and knowing that your life is not random, that your actions matter, that you are building something that reflects who you truly are. And when that happens, something shifts, because now you're not just existing, you're living, and people can feel that. There's a quiet fire in such a man, not loud, not flashy, but steady, consistent, real, and that kind of fire, it doesn't fade with age. It grows stronger. Now imagine combining emotional control, self-respect, and purpose. What kind of man does that create? It creates a man who doesn't need to prove anything, yet proves everything through his presence alone. A man who doesn't chase yet attracts. A man who doesn't demand respect yet receives it naturally. And this is just the beginning. Because what truly transforms an older man into someone deeply attractive goes even deeper than this. Now, when you observe men who carry this kind of silent strength, you start to notice something even more powerful beneath the surface, something that separates those who age with bitterness from those who age with grace. The fourth habit is discipline in self-care, and I don't mean vanity. I don't mean chasing youth or trying to look like someone you are not. I mean respecting the body and mind you have been given as if they are sacred. There is a certain attractiveness in a man who takes care of himself consistently, even when no one is watching. He eats with awareness, not excess. He moves his body not to impress, but to stay strong and capable. He sleeps with intention. He protects his energy. He avoids habits that slowly destroy his vitality. And this kind of discipline, it shows, because you can see it in the skin, in the eyes, in the posture, in the energy he carries. A man who neglects himself slowly starts to fade, not just physically, but emotionally too. But a man who respects himself through discipline, he begins to glow differently. There is a quiet dignity in it, and what makes this even more attractive is that it doesn't come from pressure, it comes from self-worth. He doesn't need a reason to take care of himself. He doesn't wait for a special occasion. He understands that every day is an opportunity to honor his life. And people feel that. They may not understand it consciously, but they sense it. They sense that this is a man who values himself. And when a man values himself, others naturally begin to value him too. Now let's go deeper. The fifth habit is emotional maturity in relationships. This is where most people lose their attractiveness over time, not because of age, but because of emotional patterns they never outgrow. An attractive older man does not play games. He does not manipulate. He does not chase chaos or toxic intensity. He understands peace. He understands communication. He understands when to speak and when silence is more powerful than argument. He doesn't try to control people because he has already learned to control himself, and this changes everything. Because in relationships, emotional maturity is one of the rarest and most attractive traits a person can have. It creates safety, it creates trust, it creates depth. A woman or anyone around him feels like they can breathe around him. They don't feel judged, they don't feel pressured, they feel understood, and that feeling is rare. We live in a world where many people are emotionally reactive, insecure, or inconsistent. But a man who has done the inner work becomes steady. He doesn't bring chaos into relationships. He brings clarity. He listens more than he speaks. He observes instead of assuming. He chooses understanding over ego. And slowly, without force, he becomes someone people naturally want to stay close to. Because emotional maturity is not just attractive, it is deeply comforting. Now there is one more habit that ties everything together, something that gives all the others meaning. The sixth habit is continuous growth. An older man who stops growing begins to fade, but a man who keeps learning, evolving, and challenging himself becomes endlessly interesting. He reads, he reflects, he questions his own beliefs, he adapts, he stays curious about life instead of becoming rigid. He understands that wisdom is not something you finish collecting, it is something you continue building until your last breath. And this growth shows in everything he does. In his conversations, he brings insight instead of complaints. In his thinking, he brings depth instead of repetition. In his presence, he brings expansion instead of limitation. People feel like they are learning when they are around him. They feel inspired. They feel awake. They feel like life has more to offer than what they currently see. And that is incredibly attractive. Because in a world where many people become stuck in their ways, a man who keeps evolving stands out effortlessly. He doesn't try to be interesting, he simply becomes it through growth. Now imagine this again, a man who has emotional control, self-respect, purpose, self-care discipline, emotional maturity, and continuous growth. That is not just an attractive man, that is a powerful presence. A man who doesn't chase life, but lives it fully. And everything around him begins to reflect that strength. And when you put all of this together, something almost unexplainable begins to happen in a man's life. His presence starts to speak before he does. People don't just hear him anymore, they feel him. Because attractiveness in older men is never about trying harder. It is about becoming aligned. It is about everything inside finally matching everything outside. And when that alignment happens, there is a kind of quiet authority that no amount of effort can fake. Now let's go even deeper into what this actually looks like in real life. A man who has built these 6 habits does not rush through life anymore. He moves with intention. Even when he is walking alone, there is a sense that he is not lost, he is simply present. He is not trying to escape time, he is living inside it. And people notice this in the smallest ways. The way he pauses before speaking, the way he doesn't interrupt, the way his silence is not uncomfortable, but grounding. It makes others feel like they don't need to perform around him. They can just be. That alone is rare. Because most people, without realizing it, are constantly performing, trying to be liked, trying to be seen, trying to be validated. But a man who has done the inner work no longer needs that. He is not seeking approval from the room, he is offering stability to it. And this is where his attractiveness becomes almost effortless. Even his past stops controlling him. Because he has learned something powerful, he is not his mistakes. He is not his failures. He is not his old identity. He is what he chooses to become today, and that gives him freedom, freedom from regret, freedom from comparison, freedom from the need to prove anything to anyone who does not understand him. And when a man is free like that, he becomes light. Not emotionally heavy, not constantly burdened, not reactive to every opinion. Instead, he becomes grounded. And grounded men are rare. Now think about how this affects the people around him. When someone sits in his presence, they feel something different. They may not be able to name it, but they feel calmer. They feel more centered. They feel like they don't need to impress him because he is not judging them from a place of insecurity. He has already outgrown that level of thinking, and this is what creates deep respect, not fear, not intimidation. But respect that comes from stability. Now there is another subtle truth here that most people miss. An older man who becomes truly attractive is not trying to be seen by everyone. He becomes selective with his energy. He understands that not every space deserves his attention, and not every opinion deserves his reaction. He learns the power of distance, distance from negativity, distance from meaningless validation, distance from environments that drain him instead of building him. And in that space, he grows stronger, because silence, when used wisely, becomes power. And this is where many people misunderstand aging. They think attractiveness fades with time, but in reality, what fades is not the face, it is the habits. And what grows is not just wrinkles, it is wisdom. A man who invests in wisdom becomes more attractive every year, not less. Because wisdom carries something that youth cannot imitate: depth. depth in how he sees people, depth in how he understands pain, depth in how he handles life without losing himself in it. And this depth becomes visible even when he says nothing. Now imagine standing in front of a man like this. He does not overwhelm you. He does not compete with you. He does not try to be louder than you. But somehow, you feel his presence more than you feel most people's voices. That is the transformation, and it does not come from age. It comes from choice, from discipline, from awareness, from repetition of these 6 habits every single day until they become a way of life. And when they become a way of life, the man doesn't just look better. He becomes different. And this is where everything starts to make sense, because once a man reaches this level of inner stability, something very interesting happens around him. Life doesn't feel like a struggle for attention anymore. It feels like alignment. People begin to approach him differently. Opportunities begin to feel more natural. Even relationships start to shift in quality, not because the world changed, but because he changed. Now let's bring this journey to its deepest point. An older man who carries these 6 habits does not chase approval anymore. He understands something most people spend their entire lives trying to learn, that approval is temporary, but self-respect is permanent. And once you anchor your life in self-respect, everything else becomes secondary. He no longer needs to prove that he is valuable. He simply lives in a way that reflects it. And this changes his entire energy. You see it in how he handles conflict. He doesn't argue to win, he speaks to understand, and if understanding is not possible, he chooses peace over ego. That is not weakness, that is mastery. You see it in how he treats people. He doesn't categorize them based on what they can offer him. He treats people with basic dignity because he understands something deeper. Every person is carrying their own silent battles. And that awareness makes him softer, but not weaker, kinder, but not naive, open, but not easily shaken. And this balance, this emotional intelligence, becomes one of the most attractive forces in his personality. Now here is something even more powerful. A man like this stops competing with time. He does not fear aging anymore. He does not resist it, he understands it. He accepts that life is not about staying the same, it is about evolving into something more meaningful with each passing year. So instead of trying to look younger, he focuses on becoming wiser, calmer, stronger in spirit, and ironically, that is what makes him look even better. Because when inner peace becomes visible on the outside, it changes the way a man is perceived completely. His face becomes softer, his eyes become clearer, his presence becomes heavier in the best possible way. He becomes the kind of person people trust instantly without knowing why, and that is not appearance, that is energy. Now think about the 6 habits again. Emotional control that keeps him grounded even in chaos. Self-respect that defines his standards. Purpose that gives his life direction, self-care discipline that preserves his vitality, emotional maturity that creates peace in relationships, continuous growth that keeps him evolving. When these 6 come together, they don't just make a man attractive, they make him unshakable, and unshakable men don't need to announce themselves. Life announces them. But here is the final truth I want you to hold on to. None of this happens overnight. There is no sudden transformation. There is no magic moment where everything changes. It happens quietly, in small decisions, in daily discipline, in moments where no one is watching. And that is what makes it real, because the most attractive men in this world are not built in public. They are built in private, in silence, in consistency, in the way they choose to respond when life tests them. And slowly, over time, they become someone they themselves are proud of, not because the world finally noticed them, but because they finally became aligned with who they were meant to be, and that is the real definition of attractiveness. And now, let's bring everything together. If you take one thing from this entire journey, let it be this truth: attractiveness in older men was never about age, never about appearance, and never about trying to compete with time. It was always about what was built within, because time does not destroy a man who is aligned with himself. Time refines him. And when a man lives with emotional control, self respect, purpose, discipline, emotional maturity, and continuous growth, he stops being defined by how he looks and starts being defined by how he feels to be around. That is the real shift. People don't remember him because of his face, they remember him because of how they felt in his presence. Calm, safe, understood, inspired, grounded, and that kind of impact does not come from chasing the world. It comes from mastering yourself. So, if you are watching this right now, understand this deeply. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to pretend. You don't need to rush. You only need to return to yourself and start building these habits one day at a time. Because every small decision you make today is shaping the man you will become tomorrow. And one day, without even realizing it, you will walk into a room and you will no longer be seeking validation. You will be offering presence, and people will feel it, not because you asked them to, but because you became it. And that is the quiet power of becoming truly attractive in life, the kind that doesn't fade with age but deepens with time.